So good morning, good evening, good afternoon to everyone. While we're waiting for people to join the session, a very warm welcome from my side. Welcome Pranav Prashad, Senior Technical Officer of the ILO Switzerland. He is the facilitator and moderator and mastermind of this session. So thank you very much, Pranav, for putting this together. Also, a very big thank you to all the speakers. Pranav will introduce them one by one during the session. Thank you for being available. Thank you for being willing to discuss with us. That, to me, is a very interesting session because it touches on roles and responsibilities of policymakers and governments, an important piece of inclusive insurance. Now, before we start, some of you have already heard that, but again, some housekeeping rules. Please keep your microphone muted unless you're speaking. And in this session, Latin America is waking up slowly but surely. We have simultaneous interpretation, so you can click on that globe button to choose your language. The session is being recorded and we will make it available afterwards on the conference website. We have also been asked about PowerPoints and presentations, which will be made available, or some of them are already online. So please use the Q&A feature. Now there's a chat and there's a Q&A, and it's easier for the speakers if you put the questions in the Q&A, not in the chat function. And for any technical issues, please send a message to the person that is behind MIN executive team. Now, talking about technical questions, we've been asked by people about this virtual platform that we're using, the virtual lobby, and people were facing some problems to log on. So if you log on, you can see all participants who have registered. You can contact them through a chat function. Sometimes if you can't log on, it's maybe because you copy-pasted your number and then it adds a blank. So just make sure you don't add a blank and then it should work. If you're registered, it definitely works. Now, that is all from my side. Thank you again, Pranav, for being here with us, and the microphone is yours.
Thank you, Dirk. Thank you, MIN. Thank you, Munich Re Foundation. And a very good day and a very warm welcome to everybody to our session. My name, as Dirk mentioned, is Pranav Prashad, and I work with the ILO's Impact Insurance Facility in trying to ensure development of new products and access of inclusive insurance solutions to help insurance become a way of life at various levels for reduction of household vulnerability, promoting stronger and resilient enterprises, and assisting governments to achieve public policy objectives such as universal healthcare, food security, protection against climate change, and other issues on the government's priority list. A big thank you all for joining this session from various corners of the globe at various hours of the day. And I'm saying this because today, along with the wonderful panelists and with you, we will discuss a topic that is as relevant today as it was perhaps 20 years ago, or will be 20 years from now. How do we work towards expanding inclusive insurance footprint, inclusive insurance solutions, and ensure that it is available to those who need it the most and at the time and the place at which it is required? Under the broad theme of national strategies and policies for inclusive insurance, we will discuss the role that governments, regulators, public institutions, along with several other players play, and we will look at different models from varied geographies that have been adopted in building a range of programs. And these range from nascent solutions and seeing how they are being developed to going to mature markets and listening to players showing how they have improved schemes that have been running over the number of years, the challenges they faced, the success factors they assumed, and so on. However, the session is not just the panelists and what has been done, but it is more about you, the participants. We are keen to understand from you too, the relative roles that you feel and the importance of the different players, What are the things that you would like to understand? What are the things that kind of affect you in your work? And therefore, we will constantly be interacting with you. Dirk has mentioned various housekeeping rules and requested you to please use the Q&A box. I will only reiterate that. But in addition to that, we will also be using audience polls as a mechanism to get the feel of what you say and what you feel and what are your inputs for the session. My panelists have kindly agreed to keep responding to the questions as we go along and come on the chat box, and also align their presentations to what we hear from you. But to help us be totally aligned, we'd like to understand where all are you logging in from. And towards that, and just to get warmed up and using all these mechanisms, let's try and launch the first audience poll. Noella, can I request you to launch the poll now? The poll essentially asks you which region you are logging in from. Are you from Asia? Are you from Oceania? Are you from Africa, North America, South America, Europe? The idea is to get warmed up and figure out, and why we are doing it. It's because we want to discuss, should we talk about the benefits of having an early dinner in Asia, or talk about having a heavy breakfast in South America, or a light lunch in Europe? Now, so thank you very much. About 70% of the people have participated. This is wonderful. And we see that a lot of people from Africa, so welcome. A few people from the Americas too, so welcome to all of you. Europe, of course, afternoon time, so a lot of people from here, and of course Asians too. So a big thank you and welcome to all of you. And we'll certainly try and focus and build some of the lessons that we've learned from these locations and see how they can be built into the discussions. Thank you. So let me try and share the results too so that you can have a look too. Here you go. Wonderful. Thank you to all the 64 people who responded, and we look forward to future polls being answered by all the people who are there, but so that we remain in practice. So coming back to our topic, the link and the importance of the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, and the role that insurance can play has been talked about for some time. And those of us who attended the morning inaugural sessions saw it being talked about by various dignitaries who have spoken. The fact is that we do believe that insurance can directly impact a number of the SDGs and play a role in everything ranging from better health, better cities, better resilient infrastructure, food security, so on and so forth. And most importantly of all, which we heard in the first session, the role that partnerships play in building it up into the SDGs just cannot be overstated, because it is important to having a concerted play between policies and strategies and the multiple stakeholders that are involved so that it can work as a synchronized whole. Over the years, there are a number of insights for insurers and the sector in working with public institutions or aligning activities and programs with national policies and priorities. Results have been quite varied. This engagement is considered both a velvet glove on one hand, as a supportive instrument to build scale, promote innovation, etc. But also people have got back and said it's like an iron fist, which can limit innovations in products and processes. But how much of it is true? We'll try and explore some of these with professionals and institutions that have been a part of such efforts for a number of years, and look at different perspectives to try and unveil the success factors and improvement opportunities, as well as evaluate the positioning of insurance in the risk reduction and building resilience framework. To help us do that, it is important for us to understand your background and your engagements with insurance so that we can try and steer our discussions towards what a number of you would like to understand. And to help us get an appreciation of your engagement with insurance, can I request you, Noella, to please launch the second audience poll? Thank you. This poll asks us to talk about what is your engagement with the industry. Are you from insurance and the finance industry? Are you working for one of the donor agencies, development, and like me, an international organization, and talking about development in a larger framework? Are you a microinsurance or a microfinance provider? Do you work with any of the government or the regulatory bodies? Academics who play an important role with research and contributing insights? Are you any of the service providers, technical service providers who are now becoming a very, very important player in the entire inclusive insurance framework? Or you work in any other industries or are a student who are keen to learn? Please feel free to answer that now. Let's give it 5 more seconds and then we can move on. Thank you. Noella, can you share the results now? It's great to see a lot of people from the insurance and finance industry. So I'm assuming insurance companies, distribution partners, financial service providers, then of course, donor agencies, a fair amount of representation, plus different kinds of players. So I guess it's quite a mixed bag, but it's great that we have a predominance of the financial sector, including insurance here, so that we can try and focus on the interplay between government and the insurance sector in a more concrete manner. Thank you very much. Can we remove the poll now? Thank you. Great. So now that we understand that the focus is on insurance sector, a lot of you are from Africa and Europe combined, let's try and move on and understand what has been happening and what's actually moving forward. So therefore, we've been talking about the role of government in a holistic fashion. And there's been a lot of talk about public-private partnerships, how they've been developed, and how public-private partnerships can be an effective mechanism for developing insurance programs. Nevertheless, the outcomes in efficiency and sustainability of these operations continues to offer mixed results. So we will look at some of these examples and try and see what makes them tick and how can both government institutions and private players play an effective role in this policies. The other thing that we can actually perhaps focus on is, because policies and government is not just one single body, there are central governments, there are state governments, and all of them interact and interplay in various government-driven programs, and the private players have to work in all. So we will see how these linkages can be further enhanced. So given this background and given this entire ecosystem that we are working with and we hope to look forward, I'd like to throw a question out to you, dear audience, in trying to understand from you what you would like us to talk about. You can ask us a question now, some question that you've been thinking of, or you can just write a word in the Q&A box so that we can try and answer those questions as we go along. and we can build some of the discussions around those. So we have 1 minute to you to go ahead and ask and put in some of the questions in the Q&A box so that we can then develop discussions accordingly. It seems you're all keen to listen to us more than asking questions at this stage. Okay, great. Okay, so great. We are getting questions on COVID. We are talking about how is the reality being linked to the ground, which is great. Development of distribution channels. So this is wonderful. So thank you very much for your contributions. Now that you've got used to typing questions, please do continue typing questions during the sessions also, and we'll keep taking them on. But let us move on to the session itself. And thank you very much for being sportive and asking questions up front. And let me at this stage invite Honorable Paul Omara from Uganda to give us a perspective of the play of inclusive insurance in the country, and from his perspective, how we feel inclusive insurance solutions, agriculture insurance solutions, health insurance solutions can be expanded. Honorable Paul Omara is a member of parliament in Uganda. He is also on the financial committee and the budget committee that looks at insurance solutions in the country, and therefore define the scale, because subsidies also play an important role. So we are requesting him to kind of give us an overview on what he feels are the important issues that continue to plague the sector, and how can these sectors be overcome while defining and designing policies. Over to you, Honorable Paul Omara, for your views.
Thank you very much, Mr. Prasad, for your introduction, and also thank you for your invitation. Good afternoon, our panelists, and also our participants who are on the line. Welcome to the International Conference on Inclusive Insurance. As already been mentioned, my name is Paul Omara. I'm a member of Parliament of the Republic of Uganda. I'm also a commercial farmer, an industrialist, and also amongst many hats I wear, I'm also a board member of the ICII Lion Life Assurance Company, Uganda Limited. And it's my pleasure, ladies and gentlemen, to be one of the speakers at today's event, hosted by ILO's Impact Insurance Facility. Today's agenda, Mr. Chairman, reflects on inclusive insurance, the obstacles, the roles of governments to deepen and formalize insurance to the population, and the obstacles found in trying to do so. Let us look at inclusive insurance. Inclusive insurance as a key insurance concept should be considered as generally broader than micro insurance, so that all the undeserved and unserved current and prospective clients in developing and emerging economies can be included. According to the World Bank, inclusive insurance is a strategy to promote broad-based access to insurance for the vulnerable and underserved, and it includes different classes of insurance. If you look at the state of the market right now, I do not need to convince people in this room that inclusive insurance is a critical part of the development agenda, given the vital cover it provides to millions of individuals, homes, and businesses up and down the income spectrum in our different countries. However, it still surprises me that it is poorly understood, if all given the prominence it deserves. Inclusive insurance is recognized as a valuable means to stabilize and even improve income for individuals, households, and businesses. Mr. Chairman, it can be used alongside credit, savings, and transfers to mitigate and financially relieve the potential financial losses faced by low-income individuals and micro, small-sized enterprises that are excluded from conventional insurance. This is mainly due to affordability, product structure, and accessibility of financial services. Examples of risk targeted by inclusive insurance include health, education, disability, and accident-related risk, and funeral expenses, among others. As an industry and government, we need to continue to harness digital technology to explain our products to customers better, what is included and what is excluded. This insurance that is vital for the way we live our lives and plays a major part in the reputation of the insurance industry and, of course, our governments. Nevertheless, conferences like this are not about us patting ourselves on the back. Instead, we have the opportunity to take stock and to consider how we need to continue to evolve to meet the challenges, obstacles of fast-changing world, and most importantly, address the challenges of achieving inclusive insurance. With that in mind, I would like to outline some of the obstacles and challenges that we are facing in the industry. Let's look at obstacle one on inclusive insurance. The ongoing pandemic represents an unprecedented challenge. At the opening of the International Conference on Inclusive Insurance last November, Achim Steiner, administrator of the United Nations Development Program, UNDP, pointed out that global human development, measured as a combination of world's education, health, and income standards, was set to decline in 2020 for the first time in a generation. As it's usually the norm, those who are affected most are the vulnerable poor, the uninsured. The second one is around market knowledge remains a key barrier. According to the finding from the study by Financial Sector Deepening Uganda, which is based on figures from 2018, about 1% of the Ugandan population are formally insured, while 7.4% have some sort of risk mitigation mechanisms, and 59% uninsured. The biggest percentage represents the vulnerable and the underserved. Overall, 21 insurance companies and 2 micro insurance companies are active in Uganda. The main reasons given by the insurers for not entering the market was insufficient market information, followed by lack of demand, distribution channels, and technical expertise. The number 3 obstacle we need to look at is finding the right partners is key. Engagement from all stakeholders is necessary for market development, which includes both insurers and distribution channels, as well as supervisory and regulatory authorities, and the government. Inclusive insurance is the link between insurance and development that the government has always supported. Microinsurance is still the early phase of development, and the government should do more to increase outreach. Partnerships have become even more important in the field of climate risk insurance. Most sub-Saharan countries are exposed to drought, flood, or storm risks, with a large part of the population depending on rain-fed agriculture. Insurance against climate risk plays an important role for most countries in the region. For example, it is possible to reach 1 million farmers with strong government support. Public-private partnerships are key, as well as finding right distribution channels. The same applies for health insurance. Most market-based voluntary health microinsurance schemes have not been viable and have failed to reach scale. However, where public health schemes are in place, they can be complemented with private health insurance. And number 4, understand your customers. Insurance players need to create shared value for customers. Success only comes from meeting customers' needs. Women, for example, were disproportionately affected by the pandemic, and products need to be adjusted to meet their specific demands. Insurers providing out-of-the-box solutions such as hospital cash, covering transport costs to reach hospitals, cash payments to buy masks, or additional services such as access to online doctor consultations are proven successful. However, key barriers remain: customers' lack of understanding of how insurance works, of what it can and it cannot do, and a lack of trust. There is need for market players to invest in market research to understand the needs of prospective targeted customers. Knowing the real risk management needs of customers would also help players to create value for the customers by designing and appropriately distributing the right inclusive insurance products. Without hesitation, therefore, I would like to share some recommendations of the role that our government can play to enhance inclusive insurance. Number 1 is to make policy and regulatory environments favorable for gender-sensitive insurance and promote gender diversity in the insurance industry. Number 2, to provide technical support to collect and analyze inclusive insurance aggregated data on both the supply and the demand sides. Number 3 is to engage in addressing legal and policy constraints, which indirectly place constraints on the vulnerable and underserved related to their access and usage of insurance. Number 4, we need to build stakeholders' capacity and inclusive insurance. Number 5, let us encourage market research for inclusive insurance and innovation regarding new products and distribution channels to target the vulnerable and the underserved. Number 6, let's make financial literacy programs more responsive to vulnerable and underserved clients. And number 7, establish a good practice coalition among development cooperation agencies, insurance supervisors, policymakers, the insurance industries, and others. Subsidize insurance to make it affordable to target markets, yet profitable for insurance. Number 9, tax waivers for mass market insurance products and providers. And the last one, which is number 10, provide incentive for inclusive insurance, insurance partners, such as waiving charges on premium payments and related costs. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to conclude by saying this. So the velvet glove of government is indeed an essential component to expand the reach of inclusive insurance solutions, even though there are plenty of challenges ahead. I am confident that by working together with governments, legislators, and private sectors and so forth, we can meet these challenges, and the strength through association that we can get from the government and regulators will be more important than ever in seeing that inclusive insurance become a reality. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Paul O'Mara, for kind of setting the stage for us and highlighting the different aspects in which the players can focus on the needs of the people, the needs of the players. And thank you more for highlighting the importance of overall inclusiveness.
Yeah.
We also, as an industry, we realized that we were talking of inclusiveness in a larger sense than just microinsurance. And now this wonderful conference is called Inclusive Insurance Conference from Microinsurance Conference. Yeah. So Dirk can talk a lot more about that. But without getting into those details, I think it's very important, the fact that you mentioned of looking at not just products, but also creating value in the different players. And also the fact that it's not just the people or the beneficiaries who need to be looked at, but also the supply side of the entire market. So we'll keep these in mind as the discussions move forward. And as you very rightly mentioned, regulatory bodies have a big role to play. So let me invite Cynthia Ayoro from the IRA in Uganda, the Insurance Regulatory Authority, to highlight some of the efforts that the regulators have done and continue to do to bring about a facilitative change or overcome some of the problems that you have elegantly pointed out, Mr. O'Mara, and take insurance and inclusive insurance to the next level. So Cynthia, let me ask you a very simple question. The insurance regulatory body in Uganda has now been working on all these aspects and inclusive insurance for some time. What are the overall highlights and what are the specific issues that you have brought about to facilitate insurers to reach out to the low-income markets and make insurance more inclusive from the insurer's perspective, as well as from organizations and individuals' perspective? Yes, Cynthia.
Thank you, Pranav. And ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon, good morning, good evening. So as Mr. O'Mara pointed out, we have a number of challenges. However, we as the regulator definitely have, we recognize most of these challenges, and we also recognize the kind of industry that we're regulating. So we had the opportunity of changing our Insurance Act in 2017, and that was a chance for us to highlight some of these areas and see how we can encourage the insurance industry to come up and participate even in the micro space and give them some leeway aside from the usual requirements that they have for insurance. So when you look at our new Act of 2017, we've introduced a number of guidelines and regulations that are to provide a softer landing for insurers if they're to, for example, look into microinsurance. And we also have made an allowance for companies that are interested in just coming in as microinsurers. So what we did for those that just want to come in as microinsurers, besides the insurance companies, was we have reduced our requirements. We have lower entry requirements into the insurance sector as compared to conventional insurance. For the conventional insurers, we encourage them and we usually ask them to submit their microinsurance returns. For those who have ventured into it, definitely there have been a lot of partnerships and things like that. So what we did at the IRA, we have also introduced a number of regulations to look at the various kind of relationships that we have seen emerging. For example, in our new regulations, we have regulations that look at mobile network operators. And this guides how insurers can relate with mobile network operators. We have indexed insurance regulations.
Cynthia, you've frozen. Cynthia, can you just switch off the video and continue? Perhaps it'll be better. Okay, we seem to have lost Cynthia at a very critical juncture of when she was describing the various changes that the Ugandan regulators have brought about to help with the policies for inclusive insurance. But while we try and get Cynthia back, let us understand what is happening in other parts of the world. Okay. So we've seen the role that both regulators and policymakers are playing to make inclusive insurance more effective. But how does it all start? How do insurance players get involved? And how do insurance players play a meaningful role in a cohesive manner? I think all this comes together in some of the models that we've seen happening in Colombia, where the insurance association is actually looking at combining forces with the government and a specialized arm for the government to fund the entire program. So let me invite our colleagues from Colombia, Michael Brian Newball from Banco Lidex and Banca de las Oportunidades, which is actually the government arm for financing innovations. It's actually refreshing to learn that the government is supporting innovation in that sense. So welcome, Michael. And Natalie Perez from Fasacolda, who is focused on financial services and new products development and customer outreach programs. So over to you, Natalie and Michael, to take us through what is the program that is being set up, how is it being set up, and how is it actually coming together in a cohesive manner.
Well, thank you, Pranav. Good morning in Colombia. Good afternoon in Europe. We are very happy to share this panel with all of you. To begin from the Colombian side, we would like to underline the public-private cooperation program signed since 2016 between Fasecolda, that is the Business Trade Association of the Colombian insurance sector, and Banca de las Oportunidades, that is a program of the national government administered by the Foreign Trade Bank of Colombia. And this cooperation has the objective to reinforce the inclusive insurance in the country. So today, one representative of Fasecolda, that is me, Natalie Galan, as Pranav has mentioned, and my colleague Michael from Banca de las Oportunidades, we are going to show you a quick review of the national strategy on insurance financial inclusion, known by More Insurance, More Future, focused on the successful factors and challenges of the program. So in that way, to provide an overview of the insurance sector in our country, we will begin to providing some general figures on the insurance industry in total and on inclusive insurance particularly. In 2020, penetration of the insurance sector reached 2.8% of the GDP. That is lower than the world average, that is 6%. Premiums written by insurance companies reach about $8.2 billion. And the insurance density that is measured as per capita spending on insurance was $188 in comparison with the OCDE member countries that expend in average $3,630 per year. Another important aspect to consider is that the 76% of Colombian people are in the low and middle socioeconomic level. That means 38.5 million people. So it's a huge proportion. Besides other financial inclusion figures to underline are the percentage of people with an account in a financial institution, that is about 45%, almost the middle of the total population, where women represent 41%, while men 49%. That exists a gender gaps of 8 points. And the percentage of people with a mobile money account, that is 5%, aspect where we have an important and big gap. Now, more focus on inclusive insurance, it's important to clarify the definition of inclusive insurance in Colombia. By the supervisor, inclusive insurance is understood as those products designed to meet the needs of population that have not traditionally been insured, but is divided into subcategories. First one, microinsurance, that are products designed to meet the insurance needs of the lower income population, and the mass insurance, that are universal, standardized, and mass market products. So considering that definition in our country, each year, the supervisors jointly with Banca de las Oportunidades measure the country financial inclusion level in a report. And according to the report of 2020, was reached that the microinsurance market in Colombia is a large potential market, but still untapped. Meanwhile, the mass insurance market is diversified and widespread, and that is shown through the following figures. In the case of the microinsurance products, represented the 2% of premiums in 2020. 19 of the 40 insurance that were considered in the report sold microinsurance products, and 3 of them accounted the 59% of the market. That focus on insurance lines of group life and personal accidents. In the massive case, it represented 31.3% of premiums in 2020, where 27 of the 40 insurers considering this report sold massive insurance products, and 5 of them accounted the 50% of the market. And that focused on insurance lines of life group debtors, personal accident, and compulsory traffic accident insurance that in Colombia we know as SOAT. With this overview of the Colombian insurance market, Michael will share with you how the institutional framework for financial inclusion works in our country and how it relates with the inclusive insurance agenda. Michael.
Thank you, Natalie. So in relation to the general guidelines of our institutional framework, I would say that one of the distinct aspects is the definition of national strategies for financial inclusion and education, which are then coupled with actions to advance an enabling regulatory environment. Specifically, last year, these strategies were sort of condensed and updated in a broader national policy on financial inclusion and literacy, which essentially serves as a political, technical, and financial coordination tool. And moving over to the second point, which is governance, the Colombian government has been implementing these strategies since 2014 through an interinstitutional committee that is made up of key ministries and agencies that interact with the private sector. And Banca de las Oportunidades, where I work, is at the core of this arrangement because our mandate to make policy recommendation come to life through specific projects, such as the one that we are presenting today. So this framework has resulted in different policy initiatives that are centered around inclusive insurance. So we would like to share 3 specifically. On one hand, the Ministry of Finance Regulation Unit has proposed a roadmap to modernize the regulatory framework of this sector, which is focused on pillars like fostering inclusion through greater capacities to adopt technological innovations, which we believe is crucial for growing the inclusive insurance market. We also have a bill currently under revision, which will function like a complementary framework for greater coverage efficiency. And that includes benefits for households that are part of cash transfer programs, as well as more opportunities to build inclusive index solutions. And finally, there is an ongoing agenda between the national government and PASECOLDA, on which we will, of course, delve extensively throughout the rest of our presentation. So moving on to the next slide, first we would like to share how we constructed this public and private agenda. And we started with a country level diagnostic. So in tandem with the Access to Insurance Initiative, the Inter-American Development Bank, and the Colombian Financial Superintendents, which is our country's financial sector supervision authority, FASECOLDA and Banca de las Oportunidades published a diagnostic tool titled Towards an Inclusive and Insurance Sector. And this document sort of evaluates 4 key areas of market development that I will further discuss in a while, and Natalie as well. But secondly, to contribute to Colombia's sustainable market development, we sought to engage all relevant stakeholders in the design of the roadmap. So it was essential to create a collaborative and multi-sectorial platform of discussion. And by 2016, we put forth a series of workshops to establish reasonable ways to implement recommendations in the areas that you see listed at the bottom of the slide. The first one being facilitating insurance market efficiency, which basically entailed suppressing regulatory barriers to spur new distribution channels for mass market and microinsurance products. And if the audience is keen to learn more about this in our country, we could certainly share more details in the Q&A section. The second one is ensuring proper coordination across implementation strategies at the government level by explicitly incorporating an inclusive insurance rhetoric in policy planning. The third one is promoting supply and distribution of value-added products to the consumer by improving what we know on the needs and the hardships of the target population. And we did this through market research and by producing and sharing more public and disaggregated data and information from companies and consumers. And the last one is protecting financial consumers by creating and closely monitoring indicators and statistics on complaints. So going into the specifics of our program, taking all of this information, Banca de las Oportunidades and FASECOLDA designed a 4-component roadmap. So the first component, for the first one, we implemented a strategy to scale up capacities by strengthening the knowledge and skills within the industry. And we did this grounded on a better understanding of the market and its needs, and by, I would say, recurrently widening the exposure of insurance companies to relevant local, regional, and international experiences. In the second component, we delivered a robust set of new information because we wanted to complement the understanding of the underserved segments, the risks associated with agricultural activities, and the overall challenges that citizens face in the different stages of policy acquisition. For the consumer protection component, we created standardized procedures to compile and analyze information on complaints. And we also created a digital and completely open financial literacy program that was designed to cater different population archetypes. And Natalie will delve a little further into this later in the presentation. And finally, we designed an incubator of inclusive insurance projects in which companies compete for funding and technical assistance by creating innovative prototypes for new distribution channels, specifically using agent networks, or for the creation of rural-oriented products. So with this overview, I would like to hand it over to Natalie. She will discuss some of the key success factors of this journey that we took together. Natalie.
Great, Michael. Yeah. So some lessons learned in relation with success factors that we can identify are 5. First one, develop the national agenda to promote inclusive insurance. Our cooperation program was completely important. That was based on the country diagnosis, the workshop to identify barrier by the supply, the demand, and environment, and an insurance sector survey. These three inputs help us to create that journey map to promote inclusive insurance with joint efforts between insurers through the National Association and the government. The second success factor was positioning of inclusive insurance in the national public agenda. This national agenda created by the public and private sector has permeated the national public agenda, especially in 2020, by the public policy, a draft law, and other regulatory papers, and as Michael has already mentioned. The third was the joint effort or joining efforts to improve access and provision of information on regulation, products, and client characteristics to provide a frame of reference of the insurance industry. Those efforts permitted that in 2018 was launched the first survey of demand for financial inclusion in insurance that allowed the industry to visualize the growth potential of the industry in terms of voluntary insurance, especially in low-income segments. In addition, it showed that this market prefers some physical interaction to buy insurance and that their purchase decision is influenced by variables such as coverage, premium cost, and payment frequency. Also, in this success factor, it's important to mention that the ILO's Impact Insurance Facility worked together with FASECOLDA and Banca de las Oportunidades to develop a roadmap to promote inclusive rural insurance in Colombia. And that begins the implementation by generating a mapping of a public available information on rurality in Colombia. Data that was already captured and available in the websites of different government institutions, but in only one place, where industry could find information focused on the rural segment about sales channel, for example, products, supply complaints, and some line products, which they aim to provide elements that promote and facilitate the design of innovative products for rural clients. And the fourth success factor is the training capacities and provide training on inclusive insurance, planning and developing training workshops, regional events, and dissemination of articles of interest with the aim of boosting the competencies, the skills, and attitudes of insurers, focused not only in how to generate value in this segment, but also in how to capture value to secure a sustainable business model of new inclusive products. Thanks to the exposure of the insurance industry to successful experience, and particularly a competitive resource fund, the Colombian insurers were motivated to develop 10 innovative inclusive products proposals that incorporate the lessons learned from the program, and one proposal to strengthen the agent channel. And in this point, it's important to underline that three of the 11 proposals has financial and technical support from our public-private cooperation program. And finally, generate proximity to demand through a digital contest. One of the questions that I have seen about how to make financial education more fun, we created a digital contest called Seguro Me Aseguro in Spanish. That means I am sure to get insured. Was carried out by the networks of the financial education program of FASECOLDA, that is called Viva Seguro, where participants acquire knowledge about risk management and insurance, and then develop a series of challenges that include disseminate the content they create on their own social networks. The strategy was made up of 4 contests aimed at 4 specific population groups of low and medium socioeconomic level, and each one will promote understanding of a type of insurance according to the needs of the defined population. The first contest was addressed to heads of households, the second one to employees, third one addressed to micro, small, and medium enterprises, and the final one focus on growth. So the first three contests were already finished and showed important results. It was a campaign scope of 470,000 people from 5 principal cities in the country, more than 5,500 views of the websites of the contest linked to the principal web, where were financial education materials, and more than 2,900 participants registered in the contest. This cooperation program has shown successful results that comes from the positioning of inclusive insurance in the national agenda, also the supply of inclusive products and alternative channels of commercialization, until the proximity to the low and medium socioeconomic segment by financial education. So to conclude our presentation, Michael will mention some challenges and opportunities of our program.
Great. So we've listed 4 of the challenges and opportunities we believe are crucial for improving the inclusive insurance footprint. The first one relates to providing the technical, financial, and commercial tools to internalize the feasibility of targeting underserved segments, given their perceived risks. And just to provide a couple of examples, we have the gender gap that Natalie mentioned at the beginning of the presentation. We also have the gap among businesses, considering that MSMEs represent around 52% of the insured in this segment, while the size of the premiums issued to large businesses is on average 75% larger than for this base group. And obviously we have the urban and rural gap, where most of the insured risks are in urban settings. The second opportunity we would like to share is the new regulatory agenda that is in the works. Colombia's inclusive insurance agenda has been conducted under a regulatory framework that does not impose sort of like unsurmountable barriers for the development of the market. However, to catalyze this development in innovative ways, it is crucial that the future regulatory efforts facilitate access to adequate distribution channels, along with strengthening of current consumer protection tools. A third challenge is the widespread unfamiliarity with the oral and written language that is used in the industry. And here, for example, Colombia's claims rejection rate was 13%, which is almost double the regional average, that is Latin American and the Caribbean, and 5 times the world's average. So we also have 85% of Colombian adults who believe that insurance companies will find any excuse not to pay. So under this context, one last challenge we found, which is listed at the bottom right side of the slide, is a constant, I would say, constrained demand due to a lack of confidence in the industry. And for instance, 6 out of 10 people believe that insurance yields more benefits to the seller than to the insured. And also households perceive that proper insurance represents an important financial tool, but their corresponding proactivity is hindered by a generalized misunderstanding and sometimes distrust on how products actually operate. So with this, we conclude our base presentation. We hope we were able to share relevant insights with the audience and fellow panelists. And of course, we are happy to answer any questions that may arise. And thanks again for the invitation.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Natalie, for actually sharing nice examples of how the theory has worked in practice and how the various initiatives have actually been implemented. So I think they will go a long way in helping Colombian strategies to be worked out. Before I actually welcome back Cynthia and get back to her, I have just a very small question, which I think the audience is also coming up. And Natalie, if you could answer in just 1 minute. You are an association and then you have various members. So these initiatives, are they undertaken at the federation, at the association level? How do you get the individual companies to work on them? So if you could quickly respond on that, please.
Okay, yeah, in Fasicolda, we have a committee of financial inclusion that get together, and we met normally each month or 2 months, bi-monthly. And in that space, all the insurers has a member, a representative of the company. So in that place, we could spread all the process that we have. And of course, in all the activities that we have mentioned before, the insurers are completely introduce and be part of all these aspects. For example, in the contest, we one of the
Okay, Natalie, I get the point. So basically, you are saying that you share it with them, and then it's left to them to basically take it up and drive it on from there.
Yeah,
okay.
Exactly.
So let's stay with that point and hold it. We'll come back to it if possible. But I think now that we have Cynthia back, related to the regulatory aspects that Michael so elegantly mentioned, and some of the questions that are coming in. So Cynthia, great to have you back. And the question that I would like to put to you is that you mentioned the various facilitative ways the Ugandan regulators are working. But of course, we also have the reality of COVID-19. So how did the regulator react to COVID-19 and ensure that insurance continues to play an important role? If you could highlight that in 2 minutes, then we'll be actually great.
Thank you very much, Pranav. So COVID-19 came as a huge shocker for us, definitely. And for, I think, a week or two, we were all stuck with what to do for the industry. However, what we did as a regulator was that we had to come to the table with the government, and we had insurance gazetted as an essential service. So much as we had a nationwide lockdown, there are certain services that did not lock down. For example, banking did not lock down. For the construction sector did not lock down. So insurance as well wasn't locked down. And much as we found ourselves in this tight position, the insurers still had to play their role. They still had to serve. And something interesting happened, maybe because people were home and were now more available, still people continued selling insurance. And for the insurers who had some systems in place, yes, they were still able to get some clients even during that tough period.
Okay,
and,
so basically getting it as an essential service helps you go ahead. I believe the positive part was that insurance sector actually grew during the pandemic. So would you like to share some figure on that?
That was a bit of a surprise for us, because for the first time in Ugandan shillings, we hit the trillion mark. The industry wrote for the first time, 1 trillion shillings. That's around $245 million. And like I said, we attribute it to the fact that, one, insurance did not close down. Two, we actually saw growth in medical business. There was quite a good uptake of medical insurance. We also have some platforms. For example, the ICII platform was there. We saw the introduction of telemedicine. That's something that wasn't really in our industry. We saw insurers really take up this idea. So I think some of these things helped insurance to remain relevant throughout the pandemic.
Great, Cynthia. So this sounds good. I do have a question for you about agriculture insurance, but let's listen to what others have to talk about agriculture insurance and come back to you about that in a bit. So great. So we've now been hearing about different models being used, different priorities, and how the regulatory bodies are going about the entire system. But of course, we have also realized that there's a huge role and there's a huge play for the government that can actually benefit or hamper the industry in that sense. So I'd like to understand from you, dear audience, as to what you feel are the important areas that the government can play a role. And let me request Noella to launch our third audience poll to understand from all of you which are the various places in which the government can play a role. You can answer 2 of them as quickly as possible, please. So can the government help with the risk and demand assessment? As we noted, the work done in Colombia, can they help in new product development? Can they help in improving client understanding? Because client understanding seems to be having a huge gap. Or there's a big role for the regulators and the government can encourage that. Plus the fact of data accessibility and use of technology broadly. So what are the priority areas for the government to support? Yeah, thank you for all those who are responding. Let's just take 20 more seconds. Wonderful. Thank you. Noella, can we share the results now? Though people are still responding, but let's share the results. We've got a trend to say facilitative regulations are there. So let's end the poll and share the results, please. Great. So facilitative regulations are important, but improving client understanding and education, as a number of you have pointed out, form an important part of the entire package that the government can assist with. That is where it becomes costly too. So let's look at how this has progressed in other geographies and then come back to Cynthia to understand a bit about agriculture insurance. So, so India has been a market where insurance is not new, and especially insurance for the masses, which gets transformed into regular agriculture insurance, has been around for over 50 years. But there has been emphasis on actually expanding to all the agriculturists recently. And we are very happy to have here with us 2 players who have been playing a role for a long time, both on the private sector side as well as the government side. So let me put this question to you, Priya, and then you can tell us a bit more. The base policy, the Prime Minister Fasal Bima Yojana, Prime Minister's crop insurance policy was launched 5 years back, and we've been hearing a lot about it in the conference over the years. But how has the policies and the things reacted in the interim? Have there been any changes? How were they brought about? What necessitated those changes? In your role as having worked in the technical support unit for this policy and having worked closely with the government agencies in this, if you could outline a few important points for us. Thank you.
Yeah, so thank you, Pranav. Thank you so much for that crisp introduction. Yes, crop insurance has been around for about 50 years, with almost a major portion of that tenure being led by more public sector insurance company, Agriculture Insurance Corporation. It's in the last 20 years that there has been privatization in this space, which has also brought in the need to actually really go down to the grassroots level. So the government has always supported crop insurance in India. So initially, this was led primarily by the banks. The distribution was led by the banks, this being bundled with agriculture funding. So the banks were the primary partners on ground, and it was mostly loany farmers who were being covered. With the Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana being launched, the non-loany farmer penetration increased. There came a need of actually going across at a micro level and educating farmers on ground as to what is this all-risk insurance product about. So in the initial days, it was like the audience may be aware already, it was a phase when the government had rolled out the National Agriculture Insurance Scheme, and then followed by some pilot WPCI's products, which finally got formalized by the government in 2016. So this being an all-risk product, there were various facets that needed to be covered, which the farmers needed to understand. These would be risks associated with prior to sowing of the crop, during the life cycle of the crop, as well as after the crop is matured, what are the risks associated with crop failures. So there were various facets that needed to be actually educated at the grassroots level. So that brought in the actual necessity of capacitizing the support function on ground, and also brought in the importance of conducting a lot of IEC activities, which is, information dissemination, partnering across with various agriculture machinery at the ground level. So farmers typically trust that machinery which is regularly interacting with them. So it was also about reaching out to them in an efficient manner. And that is how this story has evolved in the last 5 years. Nevertheless, there have been regular interventions that have been required in terms of tweaking the scheme gradually as we go along. And the government has been doing that. Every 2 to 3 years, the government has been intervening, trying to set up protocols in place so as to smoothen the entire claims management process, as well as the ground level interventions in case there are some intimations on claims as to how the entire workflow would happen. So right from inspecting the losses on ground, to intimating the claims, to actually surveying within a stipulated amount of time, and to communicate back to the farmer whether he's eligible or not. Now, what has also happened is a huge revolutionary effort that the government has made in this direction with the launch of a unified digital platform, which is the National Crop Insurance Portal. So this was launched in phases. So initially, it was just enrollment that was happening on this platform. Banks got together, started pushing a lot of information. The states then got together on the same platform, started digitizing land records, integrating that with farmer level information. And now, as we step into our 6th year of operations, we could say that most of the states are fairly digitized. The issue of not being able to identify or link the farmer with the actual plot that he owns has almost been eradicated now, with some few states left to digitize. So this is another revolutionary step I think the government has taken.
So Priya, two things you actually mentioned very importantly is this emphasis on voluntary enrollment and the issue about spreading the information about the comprehensiveness of the policy. So the policy is now kind of comprehensive. It covers right from sowing to that. So I believe a lot of ground efforts have been done and the government has been intrinsically involved in all of them. In fact, the government itself has spent a fair amount of effort and money in these IEC activities. So,
that's right.
So you have very nicely shared with us a small video. So let us quickly look at it so that we get a plethora of, a full canvas of what is possible and how the governments have actually assisted in this entire thing. So let's quickly look at that.
Right.
एवं किसान कल्याण मंत्रालय द्वारा 1 जुलाई 2021 से 7 जुलाई 2021 के बीच फसल बीमा सप्ताह का आयोजन किया गया, जिसका उद्देश्य योजना के लाभ और जागरूकता तथा किसानों के समग्र नामांकन को बढ़ाना था। अभियान के दौरान 17 राज्यों के 350 जिलों के 6,82,000 किसानों से सीधा संवाद स्थापित किया गया। कुल 586 मोबाइल वैन्स के माध्यम से 34,000 गांवों में इस योजना और उससे जुड़े लाभ की जानकारी को किसानों तक पहुंचाया गया। इसके साथ अन्य गतिविधियां जैसे नुक्कड़ नाटक, महिलाओं के लिए विशेष जागरूकता कार्यक्रम, ऑडियो वीडियो शॉर्ट फिल्म इत्यादि माध्यमों से इस योजना का व्यापक प्रचार प्रसार किया गया। फसल बीमा सप्ताह में ग्राम स्तरीय विभिन्न हिस्सेदारों का सहयोग लिया गया और जमीनी स्तर पर किसानों को इस योजना के फायदों के बारे में बेहतर ढंग से समझाने का प्रयास किया गया। इन बहुआयामी प्रयासों से किसान में योजना के प्रति जिज्ञासा जागृत हुई और बड़ी संख्या में किसानों ने इस योजना से जुड़ने में उत्सुकता दिखाई। अब किसान आने वाले कल की ओर कदम रखने से कतराएगा नहीं, बल्कि प्रधानमंत्री फसल बीमा योजना का हाथ थामकर आत्मनिर्भरता के पथ पर अग्रसर होगा।
Yeah, so thanks. So actually, this is just a quick view of all the efforts that can be done. And since information and awareness creation has been talked about quite a bit, so Indian government seems to have taken a lead in doing that. So before I actually move on to Malay, just a quick question that you've been talking about, and the audience poll itself suggested that data and technology is a big aspect, and you've alluded to this aspect in digitization of the entire platform. So who are the different players? I mean, is it just the insurers that the government focuses on, or does it talk to other players also? So just a quick view on that in 1 minute would be useful.
So the way the government actually went ahead planning some of these micro level activities, whether it is the capacity building initiatives or dissemination of information, was there was an overall pool available. So the government earmarked a small amount of that pool to be plowed back into some of these initiatives. So there is a 0.5% which is earmarked for insurance companies to actually utilize for this dissemination activity. 50% of that, as you know, that the subsidy sharing is also equal between the state and the center. So 50% of that money comes back to the central government, and the government of India then conducts mass campaigns basis these funds. The balance is left to the state and the insurance company to actually plan grassroots level activities. So this is actually a merger of both the mass level as well as the grassroots activities. And we've seen immense success in the last 2 years with the utilization of these funds appropriately.
Great. So this provides a nice wedgeway into what Malay and the AIC have been doing, because Malay, you are in a position where you are working with the largest or perhaps the only government organization that implements a lot of the government programs. So you act as a kind of a link between what happens there, and also have an effective insight of working not just with the central government, but also encouraging state governments to play a role in improving the policies and working there. And like I mentioned, data and technology and the government playing a role in that has been highlighted a couple of times during the discussions. So what I'd like to understand from you is, how did you kind of take this up and innovate on the basic government program to encourage more activities in the states and get them into the play? Over to you, Malay.
Yeah, thank you very much, Pranav. And from India, good evening to all the distinguished panelists and to the participants across the world. Yeah, this agricultural insurance company is a specialty insurance company who has been implementing this national crop insurance program that has been introduced by Government of India from time to time. So that way we are one of the flag bearers, the flag bearers of crop insurance program in India, and we have an onerous duty. So what Priya has mentioned, I'll just take a cue from there, and I'll be putting some figures actually to the perspective for the benefit of the participants, is that going to this IEC activities, information, education, and communication, Government of India and insurance companies together, they are spending almost $200,000 per annum for doing this kind of activities, which goes down deeply to the grassroots level. And this is very important when the insurance scheme has been made voluntary for the farmers. So insurance company has to step up, and we have been doing that. Not only us, other insurance, there are 18 insurance companies who have been empaneled by Ministry of Agriculture. So all are doing this work in tandem, and which is going very well. Now, coming to the technology, as Priya has mentioned, that on the enrollment part, government has come up with a national crop insurance portal, which is 100% digitized. We have, from the Ministry of Information and Technology, we have another special purpose vehicle. We call it Common Service Center. there are millions of common service center who work from the villages. They can enroll the farmers from their kiosks. Okay, farmer come with the application form, they submit their land records, and also the premium also can be debited from the wallet of the CSCs. Before that, that is collected from the farmer. So government has facilitated these kind of interventions. So Government of India, as well as the state governments, the roles are very well defined. Not only they are helping the crop insurance system on the administrative point of view, as you have mentioned that there is a technical support unit who goes into these various data analytics, and on the financial side also. I may say that the total premium volume of Indian crop insurance program is around roughly $4 billion US. Of that $4 billion US, 90% comes from the federal government and the provincial governments on a 50-50 basis. So that is the huge, enormous amount of financial support that comes from the government, apart from the administrative support that I have mentioned. And also, as Priya has mentioned, this information dissemination. Okay, and when this Prime Minister's crop insurance scheme started, government has very rightly put a lot of emphasis on the usage of technology. So technology on the enrollment that we have discussed, and also technology for loss assessment. As we all know that European Space Agency also around similar time, around 2016, came up with that, the Copernicus program. So, and based on that, the Government of India has started many pilots involving private sector, as well as we have one public sector remote sensing center also. They are all working in tandem, and many of the pilots now almost on the verge of getting conclusion. I think from next year, entire insurance industry will be benefited by the results of that.
Should we have a look at one of them now?
Yeah, sure, please.
Data is the new oil, powering innovations across industries. Transformative solutions leveraging the satellite data offer objective solutions in agriculture insurance, reducing the dependence on the cumbersome and subjective manual loss estimation process and enabling speedy disbursal of claims to the farmers when they need it most. Agriculture Insurance Company of India, in collaboration with the National Remote Sensing Center of Indian Space Research Organization, has developed a unique solution, the Bangla Shosho Bima Scheme, BSB, for the government of West Bengal. The Copernicus program of the European Space Agency ushered in a new era of agriculture remote sensing by providing an unprecedented amount of free data at a 10-meter resolution once every 5 to 12 days from its Sentinel series satellites. Biophysical indices such as normalized difference vegetation index indicating crop greenness, land surface wetness index indicating the moisture content, synthetic aperture radar, backscatter indicating the structure of the crop, and fraction of absorbed photosynthetically active radiation indicating sunlight absorption are captured throughout the crop life cycle, covering the entire cropped area. These parameters detect and quantify the impact of various perils such as droughts, floods, inundation, lodging, pests, diseases, etc. on the crop health. Substantial protocol-based ground truthing exercises through mobile apps support the satellite data, allowing near real-time tracking of the crop condition. Agriculture Insurance Company of India, through a data analytics-driven dashboard, provides insights on historical and current coverage, demographic characteristics, remote sensing parameters, crop losses, and claims payable for every insurance unit, ensuring total transparency.
My claim has been processed very quickly and I have already received the amount in my bank account without any trouble.
Cascading benefits include continuous moderation of premium rates, making it affordable for the state to bear it on behalf of the smallholders.
Based on our last 5 years operational experience, we firmly believe that remote sensing technology combined with robust ground truthing technique can be a very good loss assessment solution for crop insurance system, particularly when it is dominated by smallholders.
This scheme is a paradigm shift in the way in which subsidized crop insurance have been sold in India since the 1970s. It really underlines the growing significance of parametric solutions over the past few years. We are really proud about our partnership with Agriculture Insurance Company of India to deliver a first of its kind solution that help close protection gaps in the state of West Bengal and strengthen the resilience for farmers there.
Such tech-based solutions are the future for making any crop insurance system dominated by smallholders inclusive and sustainable in the long run.
So great. It's nice to see the government actually investing in this technology and investing on all of these. So I believe one of the biggest advantages that you have pointed out is that technology has helped you reducing premiums. So in the next 1 minute, if you could give an indication of some of the cascading effects that this has had, though the video talked about it. Yeah.
Well, to start with, actually, we have reduced premium rates by 15 to 30%, depending on crop, okay? And that could save a lot of money for the government, actually, which actually help in increasing the enrollment because it is mostly free in Bengal. So because this loss estimation now has been made absolutely objective based on technology, so there is no particular local influence coming. And this has actually helped ensuring 80%, 85% of the farmers of Bengal. So almost we are reaching towards universalization that you spoke about in your initial remark. And we are very much indebted to the government of West Bengal for giving us this opportunity to operationalize remote sensing based crop insurance solution. And it has created a lot of news in the entire country. As I said that even the Ministry of Agriculture also has done a lot of pilot. I think it will help converging these ideas, and probably India will move towards this technology-based crop insurance system very soon.
So great. Let me stop you at this stage because it's good to see the technology-based cost reduction and that leading to innovation being brought about. And let me reconnect to Cynthia at this stage before we wind up. Cynthia, you've seen these different products coming in and this plethora of products coming in. From a regulatory aspect, I think Uganda has been looking towards products that do no harm. So what is the certification thing that has been talked about in telling the products that are good against the products that are bad? A quick intervention from you and then I can wind up.
So thank you very much, Pranav. So coming to look at the issue of products, first of all, we had as an institution to overhaul the way we're looking at new products and how they come in and how we assess them for the do no harm kind of properties. And we actually got some help from the ILO in developing our product assessment templates. However, when it comes to agriculture insurance, we, like I mentioned earlier, we've had our index regulations that has given us some kind of control. However, we're currently working with Feed the Future. UC Davis to develop a quality index that we can also use to support our parameters right now when we're looking at agriculture index products. So that's what we're trying to do for now. I'm really impressed listening to Mr. Malay. I do hope we shall also get there soon, right behind them. And it's good to see there are people pioneering in this area, especially in agriculture insurance. So yes.
So great to see that you're focusing on products and aligning them. And one of my concluding remarks was basically saying the sharing of information between governments. So you've actually initiated that. So thank you for that. So first of all, a big thank you to all my panelists for sharing their views and being open about the issues that are facing there. And a big thank you to all the people and all the participants who have been sending us regular questions. We've made efforts to kind of cover most of the broad areas of the questions during the discussions, whether they are on community building and the information technology or on products or the impact of COVID in that sense. Any of the other questions that have gotten past, my apologies, time doesn't permit us to take them, but I assure you that we'll use those questions and invite the panelists to respond to them over time and get back to you. I don't want Cynthia to talk more about the certification process because tomorrow there's a detailed session on that. So look forward to meeting many of you at that session too. But without going into too much of this, a big thank you to all of you once again for having participated in this session in such large numbers and encouraged us and provoked us and pushed us with all the questions that you asked. And a big thanks again to all my panelists for sharing their inputs and desires and the way forward on this. So back to you, Dirk, and we look forward to seeing many of you at the next sessions.
Thanks for this opportunity, Pranav. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pranav. Thank you to all the panelists for sharing your important insights. I always realize during these sessions how important it is really to talk to each other, to exchange different views and different experience and strategies, and how long it takes. We had the first international conference on inclusive insurance 2008 in Colombia. So, and since then, we are in touch with Fasik Holder, and we had it even 1 year before in India. So it's a slow process, it takes long, but it needs a long-term strategies. And I'm very happy to see these national strategies coming and governmental schemes showing up, like the Indian schemes and others. So thank you very much, Pranav, for putting that together. And I invite all of you now to the coffee break. That's another opportunity to interact as much as that is possible virtually. And then I see you all in the next session in 30 minutes. Thank you. Bye-bye.